Welcome to the West, a Narrative History. This is Chapter 10, Europe's High Middle Ages. And we're going to be talking about more of the Middle Ages today. So the questions that we're talking about is, how open are we to change in a society? And there's a lot of intellectual change that happens during the High Middle Ages. We're going to bring back a lot of that learning that was lost from the Greek and Roman society that happened during the Dark Ages. So, the Renaissance of the 12th century, there are many Renaissances. We call it the Renaissance, but there are a lot of different ones. And this is brought about by a flood of scientific, philosophical information that comes from our Arabic sources, because a lot of information from the Greek and Roman times survived in the libraries in the Muslim world. Um, and this lure of science is what draws the Christian Europeans to the Muslim libraries. Medical, astronomical, and mathematical sophistication of the Muslims was recognized by the Westerners, and they wanted to improve their own science. There was something called the dialectic. It's a type of logical argument that becomes the most important type of intellectual idea during this time. And language is the tool for scientific research. Remember, they don't have microscopes and things like that they're using to be able to look beyond what the eye can see. So they're using argument as the type of intellectual pursuit. So scholars before believed that truth is based on something is true because someone that you believed was respectable told you it was true. And now they're coming up with the idea, well, what if there's evidence or something that contradicts what that authority told you was true? So the most famous person that promoted this was Peter Abelard. He's a really popular teacher. He has a lot of personal problems that kind of bring down his popularity. You can dive into that in the book. Um, this talks about his affair that he had, and he got it, fell in love, and it caused a lot of problems. So universities came about during this time as scholasticism. Local schools became famous. They would attract international students and faculty, but there weren't international laws back then to protect them. So to protect themselves, these international groups of people formed a kind of guild called a universitas, and they could move from town to town because there was no fixed campus or building. And so that was the draw to the town to protect their income, would start making agreements with these universities to start keeping the business there. Was the life in the medieval university different? Professors would read passages to the students because, books were not readily available. And then he would tell them, kind of gloss over the text, comment on them. People didn't have the writing tools, so they basically had to memorize what they heard. And then after a lot of years in a specialized field, you might become a doctor in a field. That was the highest level. Masters could become teachers in universities, but the most highest level was a doctor, and they would wear the special gowns at each level to represent what their learning level was. Scholastics worked at these schools and drawed on the information, especially Aristotle. They were newly available. The works of Aristotle were now available from Muslim and Byzantine sources, and they employ something called new logic. And there were two important teachers, Albertus Magnus and Thomas Aquinas, and they devote their lives to reconciling Christian doctrine with what Aristotle teaches. And summa is basically all the knowledge about something. It's, you basically take everything you know and you make it into this one great big fountain of knowledge and of a person. And those two gentlemen, theirs were really important in far as rationalizing these beliefs of Christianity and Aristotelian thinking. Um, there was a lot of issues of religious revival that happened during this time, but different opinions about it. There were revisions of monastic life. Remember, monks are the like priests. They're people who devote their lives to living as religious men. They usually deny themselves any kind of worldly pleasures. Like they take vows of maybe like a vow of poverty. They devote themselves. They stay single. They take a lot of different vows depending on what order they follow, and it's during this time that a lot of those orders come about. So there's several different ones. There's also this Waldensian and Albigensian heresies that they are against the Catholic teachings, but they are all basically against these concerns against the teachings of the Catholic Church. But they're basically commenting on this more simple life, withdrawing from the concerns of the world and immersing yourself in following the Bible closely. And that's kind of the idea that all of these different religious orders are drawing upon. There was an idea of artistic vision during this time, especially in architecture. Gothic architecture comes about during this time. It's a new style of building that we see very prominent in especially churches. Um, it says it's a place to experience and not just hear about the transcendence of God. So Gothic architecture is from the High Middle Ages. The progress that artists and intellectual made during this time is not really as well matched by kings and politicians. Rulers are fighting scholars and universities um, they're fighting ideas. It's the idea that how rulers are fighting with nobles, they're fighting with clergy, they're fighting with everyone, and they're fighting with each other to try to be the top dog. And they don't really match in achievement what the intellectuals do. In England and France, their monarchies flourish, but the limitations are placed on the king's power by England, and that's going to lead to Parliament having a lot of power. In Germany and Italy, the state stays fragmented, it stays broken up. So thinkers in this period believe reason could explain everything in an intelligent universal order. But the precise nature of that model was under a fierce debate. But the question of the church and a lot of people is questioning dangerous? Should people have the right to question what people in authority tell you is true? And that's going to be a big important question for the future, because the church is going to very much not like the right people feel they have to question them. So should we fear basic challenges to deeply held beliefs if they also result in intellectual excitement and artistic innovation? Here's a list of political leaders, and that's just something for you to think about for chapter 10.